Do you think more F1 feeder series drivers should try out prototype or GT racing?
Yeah, I mean, I do, to be honest, because I mean, maybe if you asked me this question like 2-3 years ago, my answer would have been different. But I think now, with the coming of LMDH and all the new categories in WEC, I think the future in especially in prototypes is going to be really bright. And it's after driving the LMP2 and racing in Daytona and doing some testing with it, I found it really similar to a Formula car. So for drivers that are coming from F1 feeder series, it's really easy to adapt to them. It's a car that basically is like it's a Formula car with a roof. It's really still really light, a lot of downforce, proper tires. It's a proper race car basically, and that's I think what makes Formula drivers good on a certain type of car. GT racing, I have to say, is a little bit tougher. I'm not saying to not try, but for sure I can say, because I tried it myself, that when I jumped in an LMP2 car, after not more than 10 laps, I was already on the pace and it felt like home already after being in F2 after I've been driving only Formula cars for my entire career, basically. While in GT3, it took much longer to get into the pace. And I think that's why I think it's much easier for a driver that started his career in GT or touring car to stay in touring car and keep going, because it's such a different way of driving, and to go fast, it needs a completely different way and a completely different approach. Still, going back to the Marcello discussion we had before, some quick Formula drivers can be really quick in even GT cars, but it's less common, I think. I mean, it's normally Formula drivers. There are more Formula drivers that are really fast in prototypes than in GT, or at least maybe not faster, not slower than who's driving GT for many years, but a Formula driver that drives LMP can make a bigger difference.
Maybe we saw Liam Lawson, didn't we, go from his little year playing in DTM last year as well, second place. He seems to be adept at both, but from what you're saying, GT racing's not exactly anything you can equate over to Formula racing like you can with prototypes.
Yeah, I think you can relate prototypes and Formula car. You can put them in the same, let's say, in the same group. I'm talking about the car itself. And GT racing is a bit of a thing on its own, even though the cars are becoming more and more aerodynamically studied, and even the suspension and everything is getting better and better and better, and it's getting easier for someone like me getting from Formula cars to drive it. But I really do think when you come from Formula cars to adapt to prototypes, you just basically, as I said, it's just like driving the same cars. It's really easy, and with GTs, it's just it's so different that maybe you can reach a good level quite easily, but then to take off those last 3-4 tenths you missed the top drivers, it's really tough, and really it requires a completely different approach to it. So anyway, I think my answer was way too long, so coming back to the initial thing, my answer is yes. I mean, I think more and more Formula One feeder series drivers should try a different approach to it. But I think I'm saying this in a moment where already many drivers are actually doing it. Because if you think about last year FIA F3 drivers, I think there's at least 3 or 4 that moved into LMP2s. Now I don't remember the exact names, but it's a trend that already started. To me, that's what it looks like.
Totally different world with finances and everything else as well. Let's move on, because we've got a good, well, you attract a lot of attention, unsurprisingly. You're a popular guy. This question comes from B, who wants to know how much of a toll on mental health does climbing through the feeder series ranks take?
Well, it's tough. I think it depends always in a lot of things are involved in what you do. It's not only the driving, there's, you know, you have sponsors helping you. You have a lot of things that you always think about when you drive. And this is at least for me, this has been the biggest toll, you know, because I've never been in a situation where I could race, let's say, without thinking about, like, okay, how can I say it? And I've never been in a situation where I could race freely with my mind completely free without having any issues. Because, you know, when you have, your family has a lot of money, or you are lucky enough to find a really big sponsor that is paying you, and you know you have the support from these sponsors for a long time, then you actually have less pressure, because you know that anyway, in anything you do in your career, you always have a second chance. The thing is, I always, for example, was in a situation where I was waiting for opportunities to come to me, and I wasn't the one going to find the opportunities, because I never had the money to race, basically. I mean, if I had to go to an F2 team and pay the full budget, I would have quit racing in 2016. Or even I couldn't even afford GP3. I mean, I was always lucky enough to find teams that wanted to help me, and I will always be grateful to them, because I mean, without them, as I said, my career would have stopped much earlier. And so that's really, at least for me personally, it's been a really tough thing to live with, you know, because I always at the last race of the season, each season, I basically never knew if I was going to race again.
Well, this kind of ties in actually really well with the next question, which comes from Fretchen, and they wanted to know, what do you think about a feeder series system of F1, and should it be more like the Road to Indy? And we had the Road to Indy greatest of all time, Kyle Kirkwood, on recently, talking about scholarships, that if you do win the championship, you then will get promoted, you can have money coming in. Is that something you'd like to see in the F1 feeder series?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because I always think about these things, because when I think back about my career, and then I also think about other drivers that moved into GT racing or whatever it is that couldn't make it. Basically, I always think that even if you don't win the championship, but you show something. I mean, look at Verstappen. I mean, he did one year in F3. He didn't win the championship, but he showed something that year. But if Red Bull was thinking the same way as F1 or anyone. Like, if Red Bull was thinking, okay, he wins the championship or he doesn't go to F1, then we would have never seen Max Verstappen in F1 in 2016 or 15. I don't remember the year. He would have been later, because if you have to win something to get the opportunity, I mean, for sure it's good, because then, who won for sure is a good driver. But what I'm saying is, I'm quite sure there are drivers around the world that never had an even opportunity with the guy who won, because of the team or because of, could be a million things, that could have done the same and maybe have the same potential on the driving side, but never had the chance to show it. That's why I'm saying there should be a system, as you said, like Road to Indy or something like that. But I also think there should be a system that can give some drivers opportunities, some drivers that are, I don't know, like best rookie, or I don't know, can be selected by someone, I don't know, but doesn't have need necessarily to win something just because he shows something, like, I don't know, there can be best driver of the year voted by someone, could be
team managers, drivers, Formula One teams, all sorts.
Yeah, exactly, because there's always one. When you look at back at the championship, there's always, or most of the times, one driver that showed something, but at the end couldn't really put it on the results, So, but it can also not be his fault, So
you sometimes have some drivers like Oscar Piastri who show everything, win it, and still don't get the seat. So something does seem to be broken. Let me cone this as well. There's something that we had Alistair Young on a few podcasts ago, who had this, what I thought, this idea I hadn't heard of before, trying to deal with the situation we have with money in feeder series, that he thought having some sort of penalty system, because like you said earlier, some drivers race without having to worry, one, about their seat, but in particular about crashing the car and the financial implications of that. And he was suggesting some sort of either financial deduction or points deduction for drivers who do have too many incidents, which in turn should filter those out and allow drivers who are clean, who maybe don't have the finances to back up fixing the car week on week, the ability to not have to race against drivers who are catastrophic around them, but also have the ability that they would not have to worry so much about championship implications if they were hit. Would that be something you would welcome?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I have to add to this. I always enjoyed a lot watching MotoGP, and I always liked their system, because, for example, if you are Moto3 champion, that's considered a world champion. I mean, if you think about Valentino Rossi or whoever it is, and the total number of world championships they have, in those championships is included also the feeder series championship. So if you win the Moto2 championship twice, and once in Moto3 and 5 in MotoGP, you are 8 times world champion. You're not 5 times world champion. You know what I mean? I mean, that's, to me, F2 and F3 should do more for the two series to make it more similar to MotoGP. Because I think on anything, either is media stuff, there's more like they treat it kind of the same way. I mean, I don't know how it is in the other places in the world, but if I look at here in Italy, the coverage the motor races have, I know Italy is quite a good country for bike riders normally, but basically you watch Moto3 race, Moto2 race, and MotoGP race. On the media coverage side, it's like watching the same thing. It doesn't change one thing. With F2, yeah, you have live coverage, you have everything, but at least like here in Italy, for example, you don't get to see any in-depth thing about F2. You know, it's like, for example, like Moto2, Moto3, they also show some specific shows about the two categories. They interviews to the drivers the same way they do with two MotoGP drivers. With F2, like here in Italy, for example, you see the F2 race live, and that's it. And you don't see it again. I mean, either a person is on the sofa watching the TV in that moment, otherwise you will never see that race. There's no way. And also, as far as I know, then I'm saying what I heard, so apologies if I say something wrong. I know that also on how the money is shared in the bike system is a bit different. I know, like, even the small teams from smaller championship get some help from, you know, TV money, whatever it is. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I really hope that's true. Otherwise, I just made a big mistake.
We have the caveat. So. Yeah, understood.
Yeah, but I mean, anyway, even if it's not true, let's say this, even if it's not true, but I hope it's true because I heard it from someone. I think that should be how it works, you know, because now they put a budget cap to F1 teams. Why don't giving that extra budget to F2 and F3 teams? I mean, just think about how more evenly the races, because, you know, feeder series, the cars are the same, engines are the same and everything, but you can still make a big difference on setups. And there are teams that are working much more on that because they have more money than other teams. So just think how more even could the race be, and how there could be more chances even for all 20 drivers basically racing in F2, for example. If all the cars are pretty much the same because everyone has the same money, and no one has to think about crashes or the budget he needs to race, and the budget is the same for any team. You know, I think there should be a lot of things that could be done. I just don't understand why it's still the same thing.
I love hearing you because you see it from the inside as well. And we could talk about this all day, and maybe we'll have a podcast special in a few months' time. We'll get you back on and we'll figure out the best way to do things if we were running the show. But let's go on to a couple more questions that we've got. This one's from We Do a Little Private Testing via Discord. They wanted to know, you've raced with Roy Nissany, Roberto Merri, Artem Markelov, Zhou Guanyu, and Nikita Mazepin as F2 teammates. Which one would you say gave you the biggest challenge?
I'd say Markelov, because the year I was his teammate, was racing with the team already for quite a few years. I think it was 3 or 4 years. And the speed and the confidence he had in that Russian time car was crazy. And for sure, if I think back about the years I've done properly, that for me, he was the toughest teammate. Yeah, I mean, I don't think of anyone else. And also, like for me, my F2 time is finished in 2019. Like 2020, I don't count it, to be honest, because for me I shouldn't have been there. It's, you know, something that it's just a different deal. And let's say I wasn't there on the grid in 2020 because it was like I wasn't there. I've done it properly from 2015 2016 to 2019. That's it. 2020 for me is not there. So on those 4 years for me, Markelov definitely.
Simple answer. It goes on to what you were saying there about your time there. And if you feel uncomfortable answering this, I completely understand. But Borgorovsky wants to know, in 2020, you surprisingly got beaten by your teammate Mazepin, whose father's company owned the team. Did you feel you were treated equal, or were the differences in the car?
Well, I don't want to talk about, let's say, differences in the car and everything, because, to be honest, I cannot say anything about the team that year. I mean, I had a massive shunt in Sochi, and the team completely rebuilt the car and made an incredible job. And, it's been quite a tough season for everyone, really, not only for me. So I cannot really say anything about the team on the way, on how they treated me, at least, out of the car. Testing at the beginning of the season was really good. Probably or some of you know that that year I should have done GT with Aston Martin. I already had a deal signed, and I had to do only 6 races in F2, which is half of the championship. And the deal I had with the team was not to be, of course, not to be competitive or to fight for something, because at the end, with 6 races, there's no way you can win the championship anyway, So I was there just to help the team develop in their first F2 year. And, of course, Nikita was there. So I guess with my experience, it was something useful also for him. But for sure, it was not a year I've done like properly, because my mind was already somewhere else. And it's just let's say I'm not saying things were not the same between me and the other car, because it never looked like, or at least I have nothing in my hands that they show something like this. It just wasn't meant to be a year like the other. That's, I think, the best way to describe it.
You went into the season completely different preparation in your mind that you had any time before.
I had a bit completely different preparation to the year, because I was already focused on, let's say, the next chapter of my career. And then you get that last minute call, and at the beginning it looks like you're just doing a bit of some races, not all of them. It's just, I was there just to, to help someone else, not for myself. I mean, if it was for me, I would have never been there that year. I'm just being completely honest with you. So that's it.
Oh, well, let's talk about the future then, and where you were meant to be going at that point. Richard Vershaw, very fun name, wants to know, is there any particular form of racing you would like to do apart from GT, perhaps hypercar, maybe Formula E? Also, is DTM a possibility for the future?
Well, I've always watched DTM, and I always enjoyed watching it. And I think, like, especially nowadays, DTM is really close to what I'm already doing, because we run the same cars. Now there's not the famous Class 1 cars we had in the past, but it's basically a GT3 car with a little bit faster, let's say, BOP, but it's basically the same car. So I'm not saying I'm doing the same thing right now, but it's just basically, it's the same racing I'm doing now, but there's no driver changes. It's only you in the car, and the car goes a little bit faster, but that's it. I enjoyed USA quite a lot. I always watch IndyCar races, and I'd like to have a chance to go there someday, because I think for someone who did F2 for so many years and has experience in Formula cars or high-end Formula cars, Indy, IndyCar or Super Formula is probably the two best choices out of Europe. I'm probably watching more IndyCar than Super Formula right now. I'm not saying I would say no to the second one, but let's say it's much easier for me to follow because it's broadcasted always here in Italy. So I know more about IndyCar than Super Formula, let's say it this way. But for sure, USA is something I'm keeping an eye on quite closely. If I can get the chance, of course, but out of, let's say, GT and the LMDH or LMP2, these kind of things, which I think for what they said earlier, it's already understood that I'm quite interested on it. Out of those two, then IndyCar would be the choice for me.